Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Terra Prime, watching the stars through the main window. His ship was not the biggest or the strongest, but it was fast, and it was home. The crew of 35 humans had been exploring space for 6 months now, looking for new worlds where people could live. "Captain, we're getting close to the target system," said Navigator Amy Chen from her station. She was young, maybe 25, with short black hair and bright eyes that always seemed excited about something. Jake nodded and walked over to look at her screen. 3 planets showed up as small dots of light. "Any signs of life?" "The second planet looks good. It has water and air that we can breathe, no cities or technology signals though." "Perfect. Let's take a closer look." The Terra Prime moved toward the planet. Jake had done this dance many times before. Find a planet, check if it was safe, then send word back to Earth. Humans were spreading out across the galaxy, one world at a time. It was slow work, but it felt important. What Jake did not know was that other eyes were watching him. Far away on a massive ship that could hold 1,000 Terra Primes inside it, Admiral Zektor stared at his screens. The alien was tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 arms. His people, the Kalari, had been part of the Galactic Dominion Empire for over 2,000 years. "Sir, we have confirmed it," said his aide, a smaller Kalari with nervous movements. "The new species has left their home system. They are exploring now." Zektor made a sound that was like a growl. "How many ships do they have?" "Our scouts report maybe 50 ships total. All small. Nothing that could threaten even one of our patrol vessels." "Good, send word to the Emperor. Tell him we have found another young species that needs to learn their place." The message traveled fast through the Dominion's networks. Within hours, it reached the capital world of Nexus Prime, where Emperor Vexithara sat on his crystal throne. The Emperor was a Saurid, a race that looked like giant lizards that walked on 2 legs. He was 12 feet tall with green scales and yellow eyes that seemed to glow in the dark. "Another new species?" the Emperor asked his council. "How many is that this century?" 15, my lord," answered Counselor Thrix, a bug-like alien with 6 arms. "All have submitted to the Empire after proper demonstrations of our power." "Of course they have. No species is foolish enough to fight the Dominion." The Emperor's teeth showed when he smiled. "Send Admiral Zektor to their homeworld. The usual show of force should be enough." Back on the Terra Prime, Jake was reviewing the survey data when his communications officer spoke up. "Captain, we're getting a signal from Earth. It's marked urgent." "Put it through." The face of Admiral Lisa Parker appeared on the main screen. She was in her 40s, with gray hair and a serious expression. But Jake could see something else in her eyes. Worry, maybe. Or excitement. "Jake, we need you to return to Earth immediately. We have visitors." "Visitors?" "Aliens. A whole fleet of them. They showed up at the edge of our solar system this morning. And they want to talk." Jake felt his heart speed up. First contact with aliens. This was what every human had dreamed about since they first looked up at the stars. Are they friendly? Lisa's expression changed. Jake could not tell if she was trying not to laugh or trying not to be angry. "Well, they're not shooting at us, but they're not exactly friendly either. They say they want to discuss our surrender." "Our what?" "You heard me right. They want us to surrender. The whole human race. Apparently that's how things work out here." Jake stared at the screen. "They want 7 billion people to surrender because they have bigger ships?" "That's about the size of it. They sent some kind of official message about joining their empire and following their laws. Very formal, very serious." Lisa paused. "Very funny, actually." "Funny. Jake, these aliens think they can scare us into giving up everything just by showing up with a big fleet. They obviously don't know much about humans." The communication ended and Jake ordered his ship to return to Earth. During the 3-day journey, he thought about what Lisa had said. Humans had never been good at giving up. They had fought wars on their own planet for thousands of years. They had survived ice ages and plagues and disasters that should have wiped them out. They had built cities in deserts and on frozen wastelands just to prove they could do it. And now some aliens thought they would surrender just because they asked nicely. When the Terra Prime arrived at Earth, Jake could see the alien fleet right away. 200 ships, each one bigger than anything humans had ever built. They hung in space like metal mountains, dark and threatening. But Jake also saw something else. Human ships were moving around the alien fleet, not attacking but not hiding either. They were small patrol boats and defense platforms, like dogs barking at elephants. Terra Prime, this is Defense Station New Horizon. Please report to Docking Bay 7. Jake recognized the voice. Commander Lisa Parker, the woman who had called him back to Earth. When he docked, she was waiting for him with a smile on her face. "So, what's the situation?" Jake asked. "Well, the aliens are still demanding we surrender. They keep sending the same message over and over. Very polite, but very firm. They say this is how it always works." "And what did you tell them?" Lisa's smile grew bigger. "I told them they were welcome to try making us surrender, but I also told them they might want to study human history first, especially the parts about what happens when someone tries to conquer us." Jake looked out the window at the alien fleet. They were impressive, no doubt about that, but they had made one big mistake. They had tried to intimidate humans. The Grand Council chamber on Nexus Prime had not seen this much chaos in 300 years. 12 different alien species sat around a massive circular table, all talking at once. Some were shouting, some were clicking, and some were making sounds that had no names in any language. Emperor Vexithera slammed his clawed hand on the crystal table. The sound echoed through the chamber like thunder. Silence. The room went quiet. All eyes turned to the Emperor, who was pacing back and forth behind his seat. His tail swept the floor with each angry step. "Explain to me again," the Emperor said slowly, "how a species with 50 small ships refused to surrender to our fleet of 200 dreadnoughts." Admiral Zektor stood up. His forearms moved nervously as he spoke. "My lord, the humans received our message. They understood our terms, but their response was—" He paused, looking for the right words. "Their response was what?" demanded Counselor Thrix, her 6 arms clicking together. "They laughed, my lord." The room went completely silent. Several council members looked at each other with confusion. "Hi." Priest Morthgul of the Vorthak leaned forward. He was 8 feet tall and covered in black scales with smoke coming from his nose. "They laughed?" Morthgul asked. "Are you certain they understood the message?" "Yes, my lord. We sent it in their language. Very clear, very simple. Join the Empire or be destroyed. The same message that has worked for 3,000 years. "And they laughed," repeated the Emperor. The human commander Lisa Parker said, "Our message was the funniest thing she had heard all week." Then she asked if we were serious. Counselor Ilara of the Zephyrians shimmered as she changed from solid to partly see-through. "Perhaps they do not understand our power. Did you show them the fleet?" "Yes, my lady. All 200 ships. Full formation. Maximum intimidation display." "And?" She said it was impressive. Then she asked if we built them to make up for something. Several council members made confused sounds. The concept of mockery was not unknown to them, but it had never been directed at the Empire before. Lesser species were supposed to be afraid, not amused. Emperor Vexithera stopped pacing. "Send an ambassador. A proper diplomatic mission. Perhaps they need time to understand their situation." 3 days later, Ambassador Rachel Green stepped off the civilian transport Freedom Bell onto the docking platform of Nexus Prime. She was a small woman with red hair and green eyes that seemed to find everything interesting. Behind her walked Dr. Sam Rodriguez, a man in his 50s with gray hair and kind eyes, and Ben Collins, a young man who looked like he would rather be anywhere else. The Alien Reception Committee was designed to impress. 12 representatives, 1 from each species, all in their most formal clothing. The platform itself was made of pure crystal and floated high above the city. High Priest Morthgul stepped forward first. At 8 feet tall, he towered over the humans. Smoke came from his nose as he spoke in a deep rumbling voice. "I am Morthgul of the Vorthak. We are the warriors of the Empire. We breathe fire and our scales cannot be cut by any blade." To demonstrate, He opened his mouth and shot a stream of flame into the air. The fire was hot enough to melt steel. It was meant to show the humans how dangerous the Empire could be. Rachel clapped her hands together. That's amazing. Do you do birthday parties? The alien delegation stared at her. Morthgul's mouth stayed open, but no more fire came out. I'm sorry, Rachel continued, but that's really cool. My nephew would love that. He's 8 years old and he's crazy about dragons. Dragons? Morthgul asked. You know, big lizards that breathe fire. From our stories. You guys look just like them except you wear clothes and talk. Do you have kids? I bet they love showing off the fire breathing at school. Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward with a big smile. Excuse me, High Priest Morthgul, but I'm curious about the biology. How do you produce the fire? Is it a chemical reaction in your throat? Do you have special glands? Ben Collins was taking pictures with a small camera. This is going to be great for the folks back home. Nobody's going to believe this. Counselor Ilara tried next. She shifted from solid to see-through, then back. Again. I am Ilara of the Zephyrians. We can phase through any matter. No prison can hold us, no wall can stop us. To prove her point, she walked through a solid crystal pillar like it was not there. Ben looked impressed. Wow, that's a neat trick. Hey, can you phase through a brick wall? I've got $5 that says you can't. $5? Asked Ilara. Money. Not much, but it's the principle of the thing. Rachel was still focused on Morthgul. Seriously though, how do you control the fire? Can you make it hotter or cooler? What about different colors? My nephew would want to know. The diplomatic reception was not going as planned. The humans were supposed to be impressed and frightened. Instead, they seemed excited and curious. They asked questions that no one had ever asked before. They treated the Empire's most intimidating representatives like interesting new friends. Counselor Thrix tried to restore order. Perhaps we should discuss the terms of your surrender. Surrender? Rachel asked. Oh, right. That thing. Listen, I talked to my boss before I came here. The president wants to know why we should surrender. Because the Empire is powerful, Thrix explained. We have ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. Right. But why should we care about that? The question hung in the air like a strange smell. No one had ever asked why they should care about the Empire's power before. They just accepted it. Dr. Rodriguez pulled out a small tablet. I've been reading about your empire. Very impressive. But I have some questions about your military doctrine. Questions? Asked Admiral Zektor. Yes. I notice you've never fought a species that fights back. All your victories are against people who surrendered right away. Have you ever fought a real war? We do not need to fight wars, the Admiral said proudly. Our power is so great that no one dares oppose us. Ah, said Dr. Rodriguez. So you've never actually tested your military against someone who wanted to win. Ben Collins was still taking pictures. This is great stuff. The guys at the bar are never going to believe I met real aliens. Rachel looked around at all the confused alien faces. Look, this has been fun, but I think we have different ideas about how this works. You seem to think that having big ships means everyone should do what you say. We think that having big ships just means you have big ships. The diplomatic session continued for 6 more hours. By the end, half the alien delegates had headaches, and the other half were questioning everything they thought they knew about intimidation, power, and diplomacy. The humans went back to their ship happy and excited. The aliens went back to their council chamber confused and frustrated. Emperor Vexithera looked at his advisors. What just happened? I think, said Admiral Zektor slowly. We just met a species that does not understand fear. Admiral Zektor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominance, watching the human colony grow larger on his screens. New Texas was a small world with red dirt and 2 suns. The humans had been living there for only 3 years, but they had already built a city of 50,000 people. Sir, should we demand their surrender first? Asked his aide. No, Zektor replied. The Emperor wants a demonstration. These humans need to see our power. Then they will understand. The alien fleet moved into position above New Texas. 200 ships arranged in perfect formation, their weapons pointed down at the planet. It was the same display that had made 1,000 worlds surrender without a fight. On the planet below, Lieutenant Colonel Amy Turner was drinking coffee and reading reports when her communication officer ran into her office. "Colonel, we've got company. Big company." Amy looked out her window and saw the alien ships hanging in the sky like dark clouds. Each ship was the size of a city block. There were so many of them that they blocked out one of the suns. "Well," Amy said, taking another sip of coffee. "That's new." The communication system crackled to life. Admiral Zektor's voice filled the colony's speakers. "Humans of New Texas, I am Admiral Zektor of the Galactic Dominion Empire. You are surrounded. Your weapons cannot harm our ships. Your defenses cannot stop our forces. Surrender now and you will be treated well." Amy picked up her microphone. "This is Lieutenant Colonel Amy Turner, commanding officer of New Texas Colony. Nice ships you got there. You want to come down and show us what they can do?" There was a long pause. "You wish to surrender?" "Nope. I want to see if your ships are as tough as they look. How about a little demonstration? Your best against our best." On his ship, Admiral Zektor looked confused. "She wants to fight?" "It appears so, sir," said his aide. "But she only has 2,000 soldiers. We have 50,000. "Yes, sir. And she can see our ships?" "Yes, sir. And she still wants to fight." "It appears so, sir." Admiral Zektor had never encountered this situation before. Every other species had surrendered immediately when they saw the fleet. But these humans seemed excited about the idea of fighting impossible odds. "Very well," he said into his microphone. "We will demonstrate our power. Prepare for battle." Amy gathered her officers in the main meeting room. Major Kevin O'Brien sat at the table, cleaning his rifle. Captain Sandra Lopez was checking her equipment list. Sergeant Tony Martinez was eating a sandwich like nothing was happening. "Okay, people," Amy said. "We've got aliens who want to fight. They outnumber us 25-1 and their ships can probably blow up our whole planet." "Sounds fun," said Tony through a mouthful of sandwich. "Are we actually going to fight them?" asked Captain Lopez. "They asked for a demonstration. Let's give them one they won't forget." The battle began an hour later. The aliens landed their troops in perfect formation on the flat ground outside the colony. 50,000 soldiers in matching armor, carrying identical weapons. They moved like a machine, every step planned and coordinated. The humans were different. They came running out of the colony in small groups, shouting and laughing like they were going to a party. Some rode in vehicles that looked like they were built from spare parts. Others came on foot, carrying weapons that did not match and wearing armor that had been painted with bright colors and funny pictures. Admiral Zektor watched from his ship. "Are those humans enjoying themselves?" "It appears so, sir." The first alien unit advanced toward the human positions. They expected the humans to retreat or hide behind cover. Instead, the humans charged uphill directly at them, screaming battle cries that had no tactical purpose. Sergeant Tony Martinez led the charge, carrying a rocket launcher that was bigger than he was. When he saw an alien flying vehicle, he did not take cover and shoot from a safe distance. Instead, he used his jetpack to fly up and land on top of the vehicle. "Yahoo!" Tony shouted as he rode the alien craft like it was a wild horse. The alien pilot was so surprised that he forgot to shoot back. Tony planted an explosive charge on the hull and jumped off, using his jetpack to land safely while the vehicle exploded behind him. The aliens had never seen anything like it. Their war manuals did not include sections on enemy soldiers using military vehicles as playground equipment. Major Kevin O'Brien found himself facing an alien war mech that stood 20 feet tall and had enough firepower to level a building. The logical response would be to retreat and call for heavy weapon support. Instead, Kevin called his squad over. "Okay, guys, anyone want to climb the big robot?" "Can we?" asked Private Johnson. "Only one way to find out." The squad spread out around the war mech and started climbing. The alien pilot inside tried to shake them off, but the mech was not designed to deal with enemies that treated it like a jungle gym. The humans found handholds where the designers never expected anyone to grab. They climbed up the legs, around the arms, and onto the back. "This is like that obstacle course back in training," said Private Davis, "but with more shooting." The alien pilot was spinning the mech around, trying to throw off the humans. But every time he focused on one climber, 3 more would appear, somewhere else. Finally, Kevin reached the top and knocked on the cockpit window. "Excuse me," he said politely. "Could you open up? We'd like to talk." The pilot was so confused that he actually opened the cockpit. Kevin smiled and waved. "Hi there. Nice mech. Mind if we take a look inside?" All across the battlefield, similar scenes were playing out. Humans were doing things that made no sense to the aliens. They charged when they should retreat. They laughed when they should be afraid. They treated the whole battle like some kind of game. Captain Sandra Lopez found herself surrounded by 20 alien soldiers. Instead of surrendering, she started juggling grenades while backing toward a cliff. "Any of you guys know how to juggle?" she asked. "It's harder than it looks, especially with the pins pulled out." The aliens stopped advancing. They had never seen anyone juggle live explosives during a battle. "The trick is to keep them moving," Sandra continued, tossing the grenades higher. "You drop one, everybody has a bad day." She reached the cliff and looked down. It was a 30-foot drop into a river. "Well, this should be interesting." Sandra threw all the grenades at once in different directions and jumped backward off the cliff. The explosives went off just as she hit the water. When she climbed out on the other side, she was laughing. "That was awesome. Can we do it again?" Admiral Zektor watched his troops retreating back to their landing ships. They were not defeated, but they were completely confused. His soldiers did not know how to fight an enemy that seemed to enjoy being shot at. "Sir," said his aide, "the humans are requesting another round." "Another round?" Lieutenant Colonel Turner says that was fun and wants to know if we can do it again tomorrow. She also wants to know if we take requests for specific types of battles. Admiral Zektor stared at the planet below. In 3,000 years, no species had ever asked to fight the Empire twice in one day. "What kind of species are these humans?" he asked. Down on the planet, Amy Turner was already planning the next day's activities. "That was a good warm-up," she told her officers. "Tomorrow, let's see if they want to try night fighting, or maybe underwater combat. That could be fun." Emperor Vexthara paced around his throne room, his claws clicking on the crystal floor. 3 attempts to intimidate the humans had failed. First they laughed at his fleet, then they confused his diplomats. Now they had turned a military demonstration into some kind of game. "We need a different approach," he told his council. "These humans do not respond to force or threats. Perhaps we should try to civilize them instead." Councillor Thrix nodded her 6 arms in agreement. "Yes, my lord. Cultural exchange has worked before. When lesser species see our advanced civilization, they usually become ashamed of their primitive ways." "Excellent. Set up exchange programs. Bring their students here to learn from our greatest minds. Send our observers to study their society. Once they see how much better we are, they will want to join us willingly." Dr. Kiltherax of the Serenity Collective was chosen to lead the first group of alien observers to Earth. His people were known for their calm and peaceful nature. They had spent centuries perfecting the art of quiet contemplation and inner peace. "This should be simple," he told his team as their ship approached Earth. "We observe their culture, document their primitive customs, and write a report showing why they need our guidance." The first shock came when they landed at the human spaceport. Instead of the quiet, orderly facility they expected, they found organized chaos. Hundreds of people were moving in all directions, talking loudly, carrying strange objects, and making more noise than a Serenity Collective city made in a whole year. "Is there some kind of emergency?" asked Dr. Kiltherax. "No, sir," replied the human guide, a cheerful woman named Betty Rogers. "This is just a normal Tuesday." "But why is everyone shouting?" "They're not shouting. They're just talking. This is actually pretty quiet for rush hour." The alien team followed Betty through the spaceport, trying to understand what they were seeing. Humans were eating food while walking. Children were running around their parents in circles. Someone was playing music from a small device, and 3 people were dancing to it while waiting for their transportation. "Don't you have rules about public behavior?" asked one of the observers. "Sure," said Betty. "No violence, no stealing. No bothering people who don't want to be bothered. Pretty simple stuff." "What about noise control, order, proper walking formations?" Betty looked confused. "Why would we need formations for walking? We're not an army. We're just people going places." Meanwhile, on the academic world of Scholars Rest, the first group of human exchange students had arrived. The planet was home to the galaxy's most prestigious university, where the brightest minds from across the Empire came to study in perfect silence and order. Professor Veltar of the Academic Guild met the human students at the landing pad. Everything was arranged perfectly. The students would be given individual study chambers, access to the Grand Library, and a complete schedule of meditation and learning time. "Welcome to Scholars Rest," he said formally. "Here you will learn the proper way to acquire knowledge. First, you must understand that our library requires complete silence at all times. Second, all studying must be done alone to avoid distractions. Third, meals are taken in silence to promote digestion and contemplation." The human students looked at each other. There were 20 of them, from different colleges back on Earth. Chris Johnson was studying mathematics. Maria Santos was learning about alien cultures. Pete Wilson was working on engineering problems. "Excuse me," said Chris, "but did you say we have to study alone?" "Yes. Individual contemplation is the only way to truly understand complex subjects. But what about study groups? You know, working together, sharing ideas, helping each other, figure things out." Professor Veltar looked shocked. "Sharing ideas, but that would contaminate your individual learning process." "Actually," said Maria, "that's kind of the point. When we share ideas, we get better ideas. It's like cooking. You mix different ingredients together and get something new and better." "You compare learning to cooking?" "Sure. Both involve taking raw materials and turning them into something useful. Both work better when you experiment and try new combinations." The professor did not know what to say. In 300 years of teaching, no student had ever compared learning to cooking. Things got worse when the humans saw their individual study chambers. Each room was a small white cube with a desk, a chair, and a single reading light. No windows, no decorations, no distractions of any kind. "This looks like a prison cell," said Pete. "It is designed for maximum focus," explained the professor. "But where's the coffee machine, the snack area, the comfortable chairs for when your back gets tired?" Such things would distract from learning. The humans looked at each other again. Then Chris spoke up. "Professor, can we make some small changes to our rooms? Nothing major, just some improvements." "What kind of improvements?" "Well, for starters, can we knock down the walls between some of the rooms? We work better when we can talk to each other." Professor Veltar nearly fainted. "Knock down walls? In the sacred study chambers?" "Just a few walls, and maybe we could get some plants. Some music? A coffee machine? Oh, and better lighting. This single light makes everything look depressing." Within a week, the human section of the university was unrecognizable. The students had somehow convinced maintenance to remove walls, creating large common areas where they could work together. They had brought in plants, comfortable furniture, and several coffee machines. Someone had even set up a small kitchen where they could make snacks during late-night study sessions. The strangest part was that they were actually learning faster than any students in the university's history. Chris Johnson solved a mathematical problem that had puzzled scholars for 300 years. When asked how he did it, he shrugged. "I just tried a bunch of different approaches until something worked. Then I asked Maria and Pete to check my work. They spotted 2 mistakes and suggested a better method. Team effort, you know." Professor Veltar filed a report with the Academic Guild describing the humans as dangerously creative and impossibly collaborative. Back on Earth, Dr. Kiltherax was having his own problems. His team had been assigned to study human entertainment, and what they found was deeply disturbing. "They watch other humans fight each other," he wrote in his report. "Not to resolve disputes or determine leadership, but for enjoyment. They call it sports, and millions of people watch these contests while eating snacks and shouting at the participants. The next day, his human guide took him to something called a movie theater. "You'll love this," said Betty. "It's a really sad movie. Everyone cries at the end." "They watch entertainment that makes them cry?" asked Dr. Kiltherax. "Sometimes. We also watch things that make us laugh, or scared, or excited. We like feeling different emotions." "But why would anyone want to feel scared or sad?" "Because it's interesting. It makes us think about things. Plus, it's safe. We can experience danger and sadness without actually being in danger or losing anything important." Dr. Kiltherax watched the movie in horror. The humans around him were crying, laughing, gasping, and making comments to each other throughout the entire experience. They seemed to enjoy the emotional roller coaster. "This is not normal behavior," he wrote in his report. "Humans actively seek out experiences that cause emotional distress. They appear to enjoy psychological stimulation that would be considered torture by most civilized species." The cultural exchange program continued for 3 months. By the end, the alien observers were requesting immediate transfer back to their home worlds, while the human students were asking if they could stay longer and maybe bring some friends next time. The final report to Emperor Vexithara was 300 pages long and could be summarized in one sentence: "The humans are not like other species, and we do not understand them at all." The Emperor read the report twice, then called an emergency meeting of his council. "So let me understand this," he said. "Our most advanced university was improved by human students who treated learning like a social activity. Our most peaceful observers were traumatized by human entertainment, and the humans want to continue these exchanges because they found them interesting." "That is correct, my lord," said Counselor Thrix. "What kind of species finds our civilization interesting instead of superior?" Nobody had an answer for that question. Emperor Vexithara had tried everything. Threats had not worked. Diplomacy had failed. Military demonstrations had become entertainment for the humans. Cultural exchange had only made things worse. Now he decided to use the ultimate intimidation, tactic that had never failed in 3,000 years. He would come to Earth himself with the entire Imperial fleet and deliver the final ultimatum in person. Every ship in the Galactic Dominion Empire gathered at the edge of Earth's solar system. 5,000 vessels of all sizes, from small patrol ships to massive dreadnoughts that could destroy entire moons. The fleet was so large that it took 3 hours for all the ships to arrive. Emperor Vexithara stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crown of Dominion. The ship was 10 miles long and carried enough weapons to level a continent. Around him, the bridge crew prepared for the most important broadcast in the Empire's history. "Are all communication channels ready?" the Emperor asked. "Yes, my lord. Every human device on Earth will receive this message. Every colony, every ship, every person will hear your words." "Good. Begin the broadcast." On Earth, President Helen Foster was having lunch in the White House garden when her assistant ran outside with a tablet. "Madam President, you need to see this. The aliens are broadcasting on every channel at once." Helen looked at the screen and saw Emperor Vexithara's massive form filling the display. Behind him, through the ship's windows, she could see the largest fleet of spacecraft in history. "People of Earth," the Emperor began, his voice deep and commanding. "I am Emperor Vexithara, ruler of the Galactic Dominion Empire. For 3,000 years my empire has brought order to the galaxy. 1,000 worlds bow before my throne. 1,000,000 species follow my laws." Helen raised an eyebrow. "He's really going all out with this speech." "You have refused our generous offers to join our empire peacefully," the Emperor continued. "You have mocked our diplomats, confused our scholars, and turned our military demonstrations into games. This ends now." The camera pulled back to show the massive fleet surrounding Earth. Ships filled the space between Earth and the Moon, their dark hulls blocking out the stars. "Behold the full might of the Galactic Dominion. No species has ever seen this many ships assembled in one place. No world has ever faced such overwhelming power. You have one choice remaining: kneel before the Empire or be destroyed. You have 1 hour to decide." The broadcast ended. Helen looked at her assistant and started laughing. "Ma'am?" the assistant asked. "Get me a broadcast set up on the White House lawn. I want to respond to His Imperial Majesty personally." Within 30 minutes, cameras were positioned and technicians had established a link to every human communication network. News of the alien ultimatum had spread across human space faster than the Emperor's message itself. People were gathering around screens on Earth, on Mars, on the orbital stations, and in colonies dozens of light years away. President Foster walked onto the White House lawn wearing a casual blue dress and her favorite sneakers. She looked relaxed and comfortable, like she was about to chat with old friends rather than respond to an ultimatum from an alien emperor. "Hello, everyone," she began with a warm smile. "I'm sure you all saw that interesting broadcast from our alien visitors. Emperor Vexithara seems to think we should be impressed by his big speech and his big fleet." She paused and looked directly into the camera. "Let me get this straight. You're threatening us because we won't voluntarily become your servants, and your proof that we should be afraid is that you've successfully bullied everyone else in the galaxy? That's like a schoolyard bully bragging about beating up kindergartners." Across human space, people started laughing and cheering. On the alien ships, confusion spread through the ranks as they heard the human response. Emperor Vexithara, Helen, continued, "You've ruled for 3,000 years by intimidating civilizations that were impressed by big ships and scary voices. Well, congratulations, you just met the species that thought the Titanic sinking was a design flaw worth fixing, not a reason to stop building ships." She started walking across the lawn, gesturing with her hands as she talked. "We're the people who looked at the atom and said, 'I bet we can split that,' then used the result to power cities and level mountains depending on our mood that day. We're the species that went to the moon not because we had to, but because it was there and we wanted to see what it was like." The president stopped and faced the camera again. "You want to know what's really funny about your ultimatum? You think having the biggest fleet in history makes you scary, but we're the species that invented the phrase, 'the bigger they are, the harder they fall.' We're also the ones who came up with 'Bring it on.'" On the Imperial flagship, Emperor Vexthara watched the broadcast with growing disbelief. No species had ever responded to the final ultimatum with mockery and defiance. "Sir," said Admiral Zektor, "should we begin the attack?" "Wait," the Emperor replied. "She's still talking." President Foster was indeed still talking, and her words were spreading across human space like wildfire. "You know what the best part is? You came all this way, brought all these ships, made this big dramatic speech, and you still don't understand what you're dealing with. We're not impressed by your threats because we've been threatening ourselves for centuries and we're still here." She smiled directly at the camera. "We survived ice ages and plagues. We survived 2 world wars that killed millions of our own people. We survived the Cold War when we pointed enough nuclear weapons at ourselves to destroy our own planet 10 times over. And we did all of that before we even left our home world." The broadcast was being watched by billions of humans, but it was also being monitored by alien intelligence services across the Empire. For the first time in 3,000 years, member species of the Dominion were hearing someone stand up to the Emperor. "So here's our answer to your ultimatum. Your Imperial Majesty, thanks for the offer, but we'll pass. We've got our own plans and they don't include kneeling to anyone. But hey, if you want to stick around and learn something about humans, you're welcome to try. Just remember, we're the species that invented the saying, 'Hold my beer and watch this.'" President Foster was about to end her broadcast when her assistant ran up and whispered something in her ear. She smiled and looked back at the camera. "Oh, I almost forgot. I just got a message from 8-year-old Sally Thompson from our new Denver colony. Sally, would you like to show everyone your drawing?" A small girl with pigtails ran onto the White House lawn carrying a piece of paper covered in finger paint. She held it up to the camera. It showed a cartoon dinosaur wearing a golden crown with a speech bubble that said, "I'm very scary, fear me." "I drew the Emperor," Sally announced proudly. "He looks like the dinosaurs in my books, but with a hat." President Foster laughed and patted Sally's head. "That's a wonderful drawing, sweetheart. I'm sure Emperor Vexithara will love it." The broadcast ended, but the damage was done. Within hours, Sally's drawing was being shared across human space faster than any message in history. Humans were making their own versions, adding funny captions, and creating thousands of variations. the image of the mighty emperor as a cartoon. Dinosaur with a crown became the most popular piece of media in human civilization. But the real shock came when the drawings started showing up on alien worlds. Species that had been part of the empire for centuries were sharing the image in secret, laughing at their ruler for the first time in their lives. On the Imperial flagship, Emperor Vexthara stared at the reports coming in from across his empire. His own subjects were mocking him. Member worlds were asking questions they had never asked before. Some were even requesting information about human culture and government. "Sir," said Admiral Zector quietly, "what are your orders?" The Emperor looked out at Earth, the small blue world that had somehow turned his ultimate show of force into a galaxy-wide joke. For 3,000 years, the Empire had ruled through fear and intimidation. Now, one species had shown everyone that the Emperor was just another bully with big ships. "Sir?" the Admiral asked again. Emperor Vexithara was silent for a long moment. Then he asked the question that would change the galaxy forever. "Admiral, how do we negotiate with a species that responds to threats with laughter?"